Hello there. Let's talk about ratios today. We've talked about proportions, proportion equations, and even unit rates already. And now let's look a little more at what we can do with them. So a ratio is essentially a fraction used to compare two quantities whose units are the same type. And we're going to look at some examples of male to female. And when you look at males to females, they're all people, and we're not talking about number of females per day or anything like that. We're talking about the ratio of two types of humans to one another. So those are ratios. That's different from what we looked at before, which was rates, which could be miles per hour. So miles and hours aren't the same types of units. One's measurement and one's time. So here we're talking about the same type. So we could put an example. And we'll see that we have a few ways to write these ratios, but let's start off looking at an example. At ENMU, the 2013 enrollment shows that the undergraduate student body consists of 1,998 male students and 2,574 female students. Write the ratio of men to women. So we're asking here the ratio, and it's men to women. So in our problem, we're being told what order to give those two figures. And so if we do men to women, then we would write 1998 men to 2574 women. That's one way we could write that. We can also write it as a fraction, 1998 to 2574. And we could also write it as with a colon in between so that we read 1998 to 2574. And we could also use the word to in between. So it would be 1998 to 2574. So three different ways that we could write a ratio when we're talking about males to female students at ENMU. If we have equivalent ratios, there are going to be two ratios or multiple ratios that express the same relationship. And you could think of them as equivalent fractions. It's very similar. And for example, in our males to females at ENMU, we have 1998 to 2574. And I can see that they're both even numbers. I can divide the numerator and the denominator each by 2, and then I can write an equivalent fraction, which would be 999 over 1287. Now, neither one of them is even anymore, so I can't divide top and bottom by 2 anymore, but I see that 999 I know I can divide by 3. And so if I add up the digits on the denominator, 8 and 7 is 15, 16, 17, 18, I get 18 for the sum of the digits, and 3 goes into 18, so I know 3 will go into 1287. So I can divide the top and the bottom, the numerator and denominator, each by 3. And that'll give me another equivalent fraction of 333 over 429. And I know 333 is still divisible by 3, and then I can check 429. So 9 plus 2 is 11, plus 4 is 15, and 15 is divisible by 3. So I know 429 is. So I can do that using long division, or I can just use my calculator. And that gives me 111 over 143. So the point in me giving you all of these separate fractions is so that you can see that this is a ratio of males to females for ENMU in 2013, And this is a ratio of males to females. These are all equivalent ratios representing that same population in 2013, the males to the females at ENMU. So we can use any of those to talk about the ratio of males to females, and generally we like to give it in its most reduced form, so we could use this one to represent the males to females. Now, the other ones aren't incorrect, they're fine. I do want to show you on my calculator how you can do that. And here's my calculator, and if I want to put in the fraction, I put it in, so when it's turned on, if I do clear, then I can put in 1998, and then I'm looking for this ABC button right there. I'm hoping you can see that. If you push that button, it tells the calculator you're entering a fraction, and then 2574, and it might be able to do this one. We'll just push enter. Yeah, and it reduced it for me to 111, and then it has a slash 143. That's the most reduced form of that fraction, and so that's how you can use your calculator to reduce fractions for you. Don't say I told you. So we have another problem that we'd like to look at and see about ratios, and it is according to Fortune's 2011 list of the top 40 under 40, that's the 40 people that are less than 40 years of age. The up-and-coming list of the top 40 adults in America includes 15 women. And so our first thing to do is to write the ratio of women on the list to the total number of adults on the list, and use all three ways of writing that notation. So if I start with, we'll just call that one A and write it down here. I want women to the total number of adults. So it was 15 to 40, or 15, or using the word 15 to 40. Now I can also reduce that, and if I want to use my calculator again, I'll type in 15, and then my special fraction button, it's like an ABC button right there, and so I push that one, and then 40, and then equals, and it tells me it's equivalent to 3/8. Now, if you know how to reduce a fraction without using the calculator, you can continue to do it that way. That's just fine. I wanted to show you the calculator method in case you have a big ugly fraction like our 1998 to 2574, or if you really don't know how to reduce well, use the calculator, let it do the work for you. I used to always tell people to learn to do everything by hand, because what if you didn't have a calculator? But that's just not even the case anymore. Pretty much everybody has access to a cell phone which has a calculator and or one of these kind of calculators, and if you're doing some calculations, go ahead and use it. It's not a big deal. Okay, so we could also have written all three of these forms, like this form here, this form here, and that form there. We could have written them all using the 3 to 8. So 3 women to 8 total in the group. Okay, the next thing we want to do, and we'll call this one B, the next thing we want to do is write the ratio of women to men. Now that's a little different. We were doing women to total people on the list, but if we want to do women to men, we would need to figure out how many men. So if we have 40 people and take away the 15 that we know are women, then we get 25. I'll double check that. 5 and 5 is 10. That gives me 40. So that means there are 25 men. And so then if I want to write my proportions or my ratios, that would be 25. We're doing women to men, so we have to do 25 in the denominator for the men and 15 in the numerator for the women. and we would want to say women to men. And that's going to be the same thing. We'd really love to reduce. This one's quick. I see that there's a 5 on the end of each number, so I can divide the numerator and the denominator by 5. So I'm thinking 15 over 25, divide each by 5, or you can use your calculator. And I end up with 3/5. So the women to men is going to be 3. The women to men is going to be 3 to 5. Okay, so there we have the original and its equivalent ratio of 3 to 5.